Thank you, Your Highness. So, the first step of Kronos' cunning plan involved Gaia. She had to lure Ornos down from the sky, or lure his avatar, or his presence, or his awareness, or something. The actual overhead sky that was his body couldn't fall on them, obviously, but he had to come down in Earth in some kind of avatar form. Since this was the way he'd come down to smash in the past, the way forward was clear. Okay, look. How metaphysical do you want to get? Because I guarantee you, you don't want me to go into a whole lecture circuit on the gods' avatars and how they were distinct from them, but part of them in their entirety all at the same time, or how interactions between the anthropomorphic personifications of primordial forces actually work in a scientific sense. Are you going to tell me you want that? Well then, you're just gonna have to accept that Oranos could come down from his body, which was the actual heavens overhead, and into a body that walked the earth, and that kind of non-capitalized body was the only way he could be killed. It was also the only way he could tap Gaia's ass, though, so he was very willing to put himself in the vulnerable position, if you know what I mean. Right, especially since he had no reason to think of it as vulnerable. He still had full access to his power, and he obviously wasn't worried about his own children or wife attacking him. Probably he'd never even conceptualized true violence. He didn't kill the Cyclops or the 100-handed ones, did he? He just tossed them where he didn't have to look at them. He felt totally safe going down into his avatar because he'd never known what it was like to feel unsafe. Again, just not a concept that made sense to him. Yes, not yet. He was about to learn. But before that, he got a phone call from Gaia. Hey babe, you up? The way you threw those kids with your big muscly arms was just so damn hot. On my way! Yeah. No, I got no idea how he fell for it either. I guess the sky isn't a job title that requires exceptional brains. So he comes down to their avatar's usual meeting spot on the surface, all ready for a good time, and he sees Gaia standing there wearing her nicest outfit, or maybe lack thereof. Stories aren't super clear, and she's holding up the most winning smile she's got. She has to, or he'll get suspicious, even if she wants nothing more than to jump up and use that sickle on the bastard herself. And Ornos is walking toward her, bottle of fancy champagne in hand. Yes, even without a France, there was champagne. Deal with it. Bedroom eyes right on her, getting more excited by the Now! Kronos and the others had been hiding beneath a rock the whole time so that the sky couldn't see them. When Ornos got close enough, Kronos gave the signal, and the four, Koios, Krios, Hyperion, Iapetus, jumped his ass. This wasn't just a physical struggle. Naturally, all of them were exerting as much divine might as they could because it was the only way they even stood a chance. They weren't trying to get into a drawn-out fight with their dad because he beat them to a pulp and they knew it. They just needed to knock him down. So the four leaped at him and overbore him like hounds jumping onto a stag, or maybe a moose, for like the sheer bulk. Once Ornos realized what was happening, he started struggling, trying to throw his kids away so he could get to his feet and figure out what the fuck was going on. He wasn't exactly in the most present frame of mind because of how hard he was focused on Gaia and how hard he was focused on Gaia. So his reaction time was a little slow. Just slow enough for each Titan to catch a flailing limb and pin him down. They couldn't hold long because, well, have you ever tried to hold down the sky? Not a winning battle long term, but they could hold him long enough for Kronos to approach with the sickle. I don't know if he gave some kind of speech or if he let his mother talk or if he just smiled before he did the deed, but yeah, trigger warning, blood and gore. Oh, good memory. Yeah, Ornos' blood, technically ichor, but blood spilling everywhere has some extended consequences, namely the creation of life on Earth. Where it struck, spirits of nature sprung up, as well as monsters and other things. None of that super relevant yet, but it will be later. For now, the relevant thing was that the sky was dead and thus about to fall. No, this wasn't a fable. There will be no chicken running around with an acorn. There will only be very quick actions from the Titans. Through some kind of magical or deific means, they basically nailed the sky to the sky. They did something at each of the four corners of the earth to make sure that Oronos' corpse wouldn't collapse and crush everything. Yeah, I'm aware. Very non-specific. I do know what it required, though. The four Titans that weren't Kronos all had to stay there. Well, not permanently, sort of. They all had to leave a chunk of their power in one of the corners of the earth, and those places became where they were based. But their physical selves could still do stuff elsewhere. That's how Koios, Krios, Hyperion, and Iapetus became the Titans of the cardinal directions: north, south, east, and west. I have no idea if it's in that order or not, though. I legitimately do not remember. I know Hyperion was associated with the sun, which lends itself to either, I don't know, like east or west. I think Krios might have been south. Yeah, you're right. Okay, it doesn't matter overly much. The four can be considered relatively interchangeable for the purposes of the overarching story. They each had their own things, mostly related to their later children. But yeah, in the Titanomachy, one was as good as another. Ooh, I'm gonna get smited for that, aren't I? It'll be fine. Yes, smited is the correct past tense, or future perfect tense? Something. English? Hard. Regardless, yes, smited. I looked it up recently in preparation for a moment exactly like this. Okay, you know me, I always come prepared. Not to give English lessons, obviously, but to talk about Greek myths. I'm always prepared for a mythological discussion, or lecture, as the case may be. Oh, yeah, okay, so back to said lecture. So, Oronos, killed. His body hung from the ceiling like a much more macabre weekend at Bernie's. The Titans, now fatherless with all that implies, nature spirits running around everywhere, and Kronos, king on high, ruling from a palace he built. Or, well, summoned into existence, more likely, on Mount Othrys, the tallest mountain in the world. Sounds nice, doesn't it? One problem: we've forgotten somebody, or 6 somebodies. Yup. Kronos promised he'd free his brothers from Tartarus so that they could be with Gaia again. Only, he didn't really feel like it. Yeah, no, getting past camp would have taken some real effort, and it's not like he'd ever met these guys. And when you came right down to it, Arnos had a point, right? I mean, they were pretty ugly. King of the 12 gorgeous titans, and then also these 6 weird dudes with gross bodies and messed up faces? Oof, Kronos wasn't so sure about that. Of course, you see where he's coming from, right? It was only reasonable to break his promise. He would have been mildly inconvenienced otherwise. Besides, who's gonna make him do it? Gaia? She's too weakened and looking less likely to regain her strength by the day. One of the other titans? Not likely. Even if they cared, he had the sickle. So they were gonna get with the him-damned program, and the weirdo freaks he didn't care about were gonna stay where they belonged, right? I mean, that's what I thought, what he thought. That's what he thought, and pretty much that's how it went. Gaia was upset, of course, but she was feeling so tired. Now, nowhere that I've read actually specifies this, but from context clues, I believe that she put too much of her personal power into making the sickle. It's not just that it was a weapon, that it was the first weapon, that it was a divine power amplifier. It was also the vessel for all of Gaia's rage, and with it, quite a lot of her strength. Kronos wielding it was far more terrifying and unstoppable than Kronos with any other sickle, even if there had been another sickle. And Gaia had wanted that when she created it. She had wanted Ouranos very dead. But now, well, she had some regrets. But there wasn't anything she could do about them. She needed to rest, and rest she did. Gaia was silent for a long time after that. I'm so glad you asked. Kronos, having discovered the joys of ruling over others, stabbing things that got in his way, and eating good food, because somewhere along the way, they'd figured out that food was a thing and it tasted nice. He decided that all that was really left was sex. Seems fairly logical to me, yeah. Less logical was his next decision and that of his brothers. Yeah, okay, ew. I mean, I suppose it's not the worst thing because deities don't really have genetics, so inbreeding isn't an issue, but still, ugh. Okay, you said it. Anyway, the sister he went with was Rhea, the most beautiful and most powerful of them all. He was the king. So no one else had any real say, Rhea included. At least the other 10 got to choose their own pairings, I think. Well, I wasn't there, was I? But, I think they all did. Regardless, though, everyone started making the babies. Out of the various unions came new titans like Atlas, Prometheus, Selene, and Helios, and a shit ton of nature spirits like the Oceanids. Kronos and Rhea, however, didn't have any children for a long time. I'm not sure why, but by the time her first bump started showing, most of the other young titans were already full-grown adults, some with children of their own. I suppose it could have been a function of titanic metabolism. Okay, I mean, hey, as far as I know, all of them were born full-grown, and it was just Kronos' children who weren't. But in the absence of any evidence whatsoever, we're just gonna go with, it took a while to conceive. But once they did conceive, they were both overjoyed. Yup, you heard me right, even Kronos. He'd seen his brothers running around with their kids and felt a little envy. He was looking forward to that rush of fatherly love, to actually having a child he could spend time with. Unfortunately, things didn't work out that way. You see, eventually, Rhea's time came and out popped a beautiful, perfect baby girl. Rhea and Kronos were both overjoyed, until Kronos noticed something off. The baby, newly named Hestia, wasn't a titan. Her power was different. Less rough, more refined, more complex, more dangerous. She couldn't use it yet, obviously, because she was still an infant, but Kronos knew. Maybe because of his time powers, maybe just because he was, perceptive, that when she grew up, Hestia would be a goddess. The kind of being that could challenge the order simply by existing, that even if she had less raw power than a titan, could make them all look like chumps. Kronos wasn't about to be unseated by his own child. No dramatic irony for this ruler of the universe, nope. But what to do? He couldn't put something like this into Tartarus, even with Camp guarding her. She'd get out eventually. He couldn't kill her either. She was clearly as immortal as her parents. What? Oh. Yeah, I guess I didn't make that clear earlier. The Titans are immortals. The primal deities are immortals. Technically, Ouranos wasn't even killed. He was just so grievously, horrifically injured that he'd never be able to heal himself. Still alive, but no longer capable of consciousness. Dead is, simply an easier shorthand. Yeah, but, okay, so Kronos couldn't do that to his daughter. For one thing, if she ever did heal, he'd be royally screwed. So he thought fast. asked Rhea to step into the other room, and, well, I think you know what's coming next. Yup. Jaws open inhumanly wide. He went full Donner. You never go full Donner, especially not on your own child. Well, she wasn't dead. He swallowed her whole. Wasn't even injured, technically, just imprisoned, her growth stunted. Kronos knew that nothing would be able to escape his stomach because, well, it wasn't just some prison, it was him. He had total control. Yep. Patricide, incest, cannibalism, treachery, the next best thing to infanticide. Kronos is really racking up the criminal charges. I guess he thinks the ruler of the universe can get away with it all. Anyway, Rhea screamed and raged, but even if he had wanted to, it's not like Kronos could have reached down his throat and plucked the kid out. Hestia was gone. Things were mighty chilly on Mount Othrys for a while. I'll bet. How does a relationship come back from one of the members eating their child? It doesn't seem very plausible to me, but apparently Rhea found a way to forgive him. Eventually. Well, you knew that Hestia wouldn't be the only child. Kronos had 6 in all. And as to why Rhea kept coming back, I really couldn't say. Because Kronos just kept doing it. Every time a new baby, a new god was born, down the hatch, Demeter, then Hera, Hades, Poseidon, each more powerful than the last, each more a threat. Kronos couldn't risk any of them running around being dangerous. It was pretty rough in his household for a while, I'd say. Rhea, constantly weeping and screaming, ever-present indigestion, judging looks from their siblings. Not the greatest of situations for anyone involved. Finally, though, Rhea decided to get smart. She was pregnant for one last time, and she had an idea. Yeah, that took a while, didn't it? Not exactly the titan of exceeding brain power but eventually she thought to ask, who do I know that has experience with her husband getting rid of her children? And after giving the matter long and careful consideration, she decided to ask her sister Tethys. No, of course, she asked Gaia. Obviously, no one's that dumb. So, a long time of praying later, remember, Gaia was very firmly asleep at this time, and the big Earth Mama stirred enough to sense what was going on. She wasn't super able to communicate, but she made a plan and trusted Rhea to figure it out. In the spot where she was praying, a cave formed in the earth. Out of the cave came a group of big dudes clothed in bronze, followed by a group of less big ladies of the motherly persuasion, followed by an absolutely massive goat. And out of the earth near her feet, up rose a small boulder on a pedestal, approximately the size of a curled-up infant. Well, you know what happens next, right? At the very least, you can figure it out like Rhea did. Of course she had to. The newly created spirits and goat understood their purpose, of course, but none of them could put the disparate purposes together into a coherent plan. That wasn't what they were created to do. Well, the Quarrets, the armored dudes, were created to make noise, and lots of it. The nymphs knew everything they'd need to do to serve as nannies and teachers for a young child. And the goat's udders ran with nectar, the drink of the immortals. No, the stone was just a rock. It did not know its purpose. No, of course it didn't. Like, on account of being a rock? You're not gonna let this one go, are you? Fine. Maybe the stone was, I don't know, specially enchanted to feel warm when you held it, or to resist the eroding effects of hydrochloric acid, or something like that. If you really want to believe it was like a sentient magic rock, look, I guess I can't stop you. I'm just gonna go with rock, though. Are you starting to put together the idea yet? Look, I know you've heard this part of the story before. Like, everyone's heard this part of the story before. I'll spell it out then, shall I? Rhea would, as soon as the child currently inside her was born, swap him out with Gaia's special stone wrapped in swaddling clothes. Kronos would eat said rock and hopefully not notice the different taste, and Rhea would then run away from him, weeping as per usual, except this time she'd be holding the real baby safe and sound. She would have to leave him in the cave so her absence from Mount Othries wouldn't be suspiciously long, but he would be able to drink from the goat's udders. He would be taken care of and taught by the nymphs, and he would be protected and trained by the Corettes, who would also make enough noise that even the ears of a Titan couldn't discern the crying baby. All making sense? Good. Good. Okay, so it made sense to Rhea too, and it worked when she put it into practice. Kronos ate the rock without any more comment than, "Damn, that baby was heavy. He would have grown up big." And Rhea got the kid to the cave with no one the wiser. She stayed with her newborn son for a few days, but had to leave eventually. She couldn't stay gone any longer than her usual period of mourning. A few of her sisters noticed that she was a bit lighter in her step than usual when she returned, but none of them questioned it. I guess they just figured she was finally getting numb to the whole affair. Nope, that's not what was happening. She finally had a living child. A son she could spend time with and love. A son she could raise and train and protect. A son who could free his siblings and finally get rid of her monster of a husband. A son named Zeus. Shit's about to go down. Well, okay, shit's about to go down. After a significant period of years, the kid needed time to grow up, didn't he? Had to learn how to use his godly powers, how to fight with all the manner of opponents, how to do addition and subtraction, all that. Yeah, like subtract one homicidal father, add one universal throne. He knew his purpose from a very young age. He drank it down with his nectar, heard it in every clash of bronze from the chorets outside, felt it seep into his head with every word the nymphs spoke. Well, that's the thing. He knew what he had to do, but he wasn't sure he had the strength to do it. Okay, I have to go on a bit of a tangent here. It's necessary context, I promise. Thanks to this week's patrons, Colby Walmsley, KirbyBoy564, Incarnus, and Zora. Thank you.